In this virtual consult, we are going to be talking about our wedding contract. So I'm going to go through the wedding contract. I'm going to go through pretty much all of it, line for line, the different sections. I'm not going to read it word for word because I want to move this video along. But this is the wedding contract that you, as a potential wedding customer, would be signing off with us. So we'll go ahead and run through that. And let's go ahead and start it. So let me switch over here to my screen view. So when you book with FineLine, we will send you a PDF contract via email to get things rolling. And this is the contract right here. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in and get started. Basically, it's a contract between FineLine and the client. You are the client. So starting at the beginning, we want to identify who the client is. So this is where you will be printing your name and, of course, putting the wedding date. We asked the question, is the client the bride or groom, yes or no? So we just want to know if the client is the bride or the groom, and if not, if it's a parent or something like that, please let us know that the person signing the contract is not the actual bride or groom. And then, of course, email and phone. Moving along. So first, again, we are identifying the client here. So the client, basically, we're saying two things. Number one, that they're over the age of 18 to legally sign a contract. And the second thing is that we're saying ultimately at the end of the day, we are responsible to the client. And we mentioned in here that we are not necessarily responsible to the person who pays. We don't necessarily concern ourselves with who is paying. Reason I bring that up at every consultation is that whenever I do a consultation and meet with a couple, 99% of the time, we have similar situations where the bride or the groom are my client. I'm handling everything with them. I'm doing all the planning, the paperwork, all the preparations and everything, but we're receiving checks in the mail from mom and dad. Basically, that's our way of saying that if the bride and groom are our client, they're the ones that we're going to be dealing with, and mom and dad might just be sending in payments on their behalf. The client's planning responsibilities. So the client's planning responsibilities, after booking us, after submitting the contract, after we process it, you will get access to our online planning form system. You'll get a login link and a password. You'll log in. You fill the planning forms out online. They're due no later than 2 weeks prior to the wedding date. So the client understands that their planning forms are due to us by 2 weeks before the wedding date. We actually have a closeout system, so they're due 2 weeks, but you get closed out of the system 12 days prior to the wedding. The reason we do that is so that there isn't last-minute changes. So if I go over something with the bride and groom, and we plan everything, this is to prevent, after that conversation, a bride or groom going in last minute, making a change, making a request that we don't see before the wedding, and then expecting us to fulfill that obligation that we never actually knew about. We basically say that all important requests should be in the planning form. If you have a request, put it in the planning form. We assure parents, basically, so if the parents are paying for it and there's things that they want, we need the parents and the bride and groom to be on the same page. So if there's something specific that a parent wants and their child is the client, basically the child or the bride and groom and the parent need to be on the same page, and that request should just end up in the planning form via the bride and groom filling out the planning form. So then getting into payments, the retainer and deposit, and then payments later. So we'll start with the retainer and deposit. First of all, the retainer is non-refundable, and it is 15%. Generally, we're doing 15%. Sometimes if we're getting a last-minute booking or something close to the date, that may be a little bit different, but generally it's a 15% retainer. So the retainer is 15% of your subtotal. The subtotal is your pre-tax total. The deposit is what we call the retainer and the sales tax. When you book with us, if you book a service that requires sales tax, we do have to charge sales tax. So up front, you're going to pay 15% of that pre-tax total and the 6% sales tax. Those two things combined is what we call the deposit. That is going to hold your date, reserve the services that you book, and keep them held until your next payment date is due. Now, after you make that initial deposit, we're going to take your remaining balance, which is generally 85%. You put 15% down, you still owe 85%. We're going to take that balance up and we're going to divide it into equal installments to make a payment plan for you. Generally, what we're going to do is the payments begin at 9 months out. So if you're booking a year or more in advance, your balance is going to be divided into 4 installments. And we're going to do those installments at 9, 6, 3, and 1 month before the wedding. That adjusts for people who are booking less than a year. So I'll give the example. If you're booking, let's say 7 months before a wedding, you obviously can't make a 9-month payment. Your wedding's in 7 months. We're going to take your balance. In that case, we're going to divide it into two. You would have a 3-month and a 1-month payment. We avoid having someone owe a payment a month after they book. So if someone books 7 months out, we're not going to ask for 3 payments beginning at 6, 3, and 1, because there's no sense in having them make a payment 1 month after they've just made a payment. So they'd have the deposit and then 2 payments at 3 and 1 month out. So that's this section. Moving along. Methods of payment. Checks are the preferred method of payment. They will be made out to FineLine Multimedia. The initial deposit can be made by credit card with no fee required. So as a convenience, if someone wants to pay their deposit by credit card, we will accept a deposit via credit card. We will incur the processing fees. As a convenience, though, after that, our expectations that after the initial deposit, that further future payments at 9, 6, 3, and 1, or however many payments you have left, we prefer that the remaining payments are done by check. If a client wants to make multiple payments by credit card, again, that initial deposit, we will eat the credit card charge, but for further payments by credit card, we then pass along the processing fee, which is 3%. So if someone wants to make multiple credit card payments, there is a 3% fee for each additional payment making by credit card. We accept Visa, MasterCard, and Discover, and then we have a line in here about if someone writes a check and we get billed for insufficient funds. So basically, if someone sends us a check and it bounces, we do incur a fee, so we have to pass that fee along since it automatically charges our account for a bounce check. Services requested. Basically, we agree to provide the services listed on the service page. I'm going to fast forward here a little bit to the end of the contract. The last page is what we call our service page, which we'll be getting to shortly, okay? So basically, whatever services you book with us, we are going to identify them on that service page. We agree to provide the client with the services as they've been advertised. And I'll get into that when we get into the service page, but basically we do have a method for keeping track of the package that you book when you booked it and making sure that you get that package as you were expecting it. Explaining that, we will sometimes, let's say we have a couple that books us 2 years in advance. Well, oftentimes by the time that wedding rolls around, our packages may have changed over the course of 2 years. But we do have a method for making sure and keeping record of what the client booked and making sure that even if a package changes over the course of 2 years, that they don't receive anything less than what they booked. This section also counts for our deadline. For photo, we have an 8-week guarantee, video a 10-week guarantee, and right in here it does say that you would receive $50 back for each week past the deadline. We do mention that we are not obligated to reduce the value of the services after you book us. And that's to protect us. As we go through this, I'll try to give extreme examples so things make sense. But in this case, let's say our standard DJ package is a 5-hour booking. We don't do 1-hour DJ gigs. So basically, someone can't lock us up, say that they want to book our DJ service, and then a month before the wedding be like, we completely changed our plans. We only need the DJ for 1 hour. Can we get a refund? Doesn't work like that because we would have never put ourselves in the position in the first place. So we've had people in the past book us for a package and then try later to reduce it to something that we wouldn't have offered. So that's how we protect ourselves. This contract is for what you book with us initially. If you want to add things on later, you can. If you want to upgrade, add additional things. So basically, there's a line in here that says this contract is for what you're booking at this time. Anything else that you want to add on, we would deal with later. This also mentions that we have service policies. At FineLine, we offer multiple services: photo, video, DJ, photo booth. Rather than making this contract 10 pages long and having all of the policies for all the services, whether or not you're booking those services, if you're just booking video, you don't need a contract that has policies for DJ, photo booth, photo. It would be a very long contract and a waste of your paper and ink to print it out. All of our services or all of our policies per service are online at finelineweddings.com/policies. And let's see here, I can show you. If you go to that, it brings you up to our policies page, and you can see here each service has its own policies. That's there if you want to review, but basically the contract is worded that each of the service policies are part of this contract. Shipping. We do charge for shipping when photo and video is involved. If you have one service, we charge $10. If you're doing photo and video, we charge $13. This covers, what we do is we always do USPS priority mail, so that it's 2-day shipping, and then also so that you get a tracking code. Back in the day, years ago, we used to give couples the option after your wedding when things are ready. Do you want to come here and pick them up or have us ship? We eliminated the pickup only because sometimes people would be like, I'm available Saturday. Can I come pick things up Saturday? Obviously, we're not here Saturday because we're out doing weddings. So we don't want things sitting here. You've been waiting several weeks for your photos and your video. We want to get them to you immediately. So as soon as they're done, we package it up, we ship it out, and it covers that. Priority mail, it keeps going up every year. So these fees are set to cover those costs. Rush fee. This is something that never really comes up. Not something anybody needs to necessarily worry about, but I'll explain why it's here and what it is. We have an 8-week guarantee. We have a 10-week guarantee for video. Late in the year, we are at our absolute busiest when September and October, the fall. Not only, that's when we're shooting and editing the highest volume of weddings. We're also doing a lot of senior pictures, engagement sessions, family pictures. The fall is insane for us. We'll get couples that, let's say they have their wedding, the first week of November, and then they'll contact us and say, hey, can we have our stuff by Christmas? I have family coming over for the holidays. We'd love to have our stuff by Christmas Day so we can, watch it with everybody. At that point, we need to be able to operate based on our deadlines and our guarantee. So we put a rush fee in there just to kind of respond to that. Be like, well, if you really want it done by a set date that's before the guarantee, here's how much we're going to charge per day to guarantee. Because if we're moving things around, I'm either going to have to pay my staff overtime to do that, or we're going to move a wedding up front to get yours done, but somebody else's is going to be late. We're going to owe them $50 per week that we are late, and they're not going to be happy. So we put that in there. It's never come up. No one's ever really needed that, but that's how we responded to really the Christmas question. Moving along, venue policies. Pretty simple. We basically say we agree to obey the rules of your venue. 90% of the time, we're specifically talking about churches. Some churches have certain rules, and we basically say when we're there doing photo and video, we will abide by the rules of the venue. The next line in here basically says a reminder that power and electricity is the responsibility of the venue. So that if the venue is having a power issue, that's not on us, that's on the venue, that's their responsibility. I always remind couples that's basically for DJ and photo booth. Photo and video, everything's battery powered, so not really an issue. But of course, DJ and photo booth, my guys need electricity at the venue to be able to do what they're supposed to do. We do have a thing in here. In extreme cases, there's some venues where just to work at the venue, we incur costs. So if that comes up, then the client needs to take care of those additional fees. Meals. We do ask that a meal be provided for the vendors that you're hiring, so that's a reminder for there. We do say that it does not have to be necessarily what the guests are eating. Some venues provide vendor meals. That's completely fine. And also a reminder for somewhere to sit. We've had, bad situations in the past where someone forgot that in order for the vendor to eat, they needed somewhere to sit. We've had situations where my staff was sitting outside eating on a 20-degree day in February. We've had instances where we've had to go in the kitchen and sit on milk crates. Just not a lot of fun, as you can expect. So just a meal and a place to sit to eat it. Whether that's in the room, it doesn't have to be in the room. A lot of places have a separate room where they feed vendors. We don't care. That's completely fine. Cancellation. So, of course, these are the big ones that everybody wants to know about. So we're actually going to jump forward here and start with cancellation by FineLine. Basically, you're protected. If we cancel on you, you get your money back. That's as simple as I can state it. What I do get into, because then people want to know, like, well, if I book something and something happens, what do you do? So I'm going to take this further, but in black and white, the contract is basically protecting you that if you book us and then we later have to cancel, you will get your money back, everything that you paid. Now, first, what we're going to do is we basically say when you book us, there's a plan A. You're booking this photographer or this DJ. You're booking this service. That is plan A. If something happens, before we just call you up and say, we have to cancel, here's your money back, and leave you in a lurch, we're going to approach you with plan B. We basically say, you booked us for plan A. There's an issue. Here is plan B. We can do plan B for you. Plan B will not cost you as much, so we can lessen your invoice if you want to stay with us and move forward with plan B. You then have the option. You can go with plan B, but it's here to protect you. You booked plan A. If we're not able to give you plan A, you can say, I don't want plan B. I wanted plan A. I want my money back. So that is there to protect you. Cancellation by client. Basically, once clients book us, we are booked. We are human beings. I can only book myself for one wedding a day. So I cannot risk someone booking me and then a month before the wedding canceling and expecting that they're going to get all their money back. This is what we do for a living. A client cannot take away our ability to earn income. So basically, if a client puts money down and holds us for a date and then cancels, they're risking our ability to make a living. So if you cancel on us for a reason that is not our fault, it has nothing to do with us, then the client forfeits what they've paid to that point. Now, a lot of vendors never bring this up to their clients. It's something that's not really well known, so we try to educate our clients a little bit here. In the wedding industry, there is a thing called event insurance. So if you are worried, if you're saying, well, what would happen in the worst situation and we have to cancel our wedding? Well, if that is a concern of yours, that's when you might want to look into event insurance. You can contact your local insurance provider. There are websites online that specifically cater to wedding event insurance, but you can protect your investment. But basically, we're saying we're not an insurance company. We are not set up. We are not protecting your investment in those regards. If you want to do that and then have the ability to cancel on your venue and cancel on your photographer and not lose everything, that's when you're going to want to look into event insurance. So we put that in there as kind of an educational thing for our clients, because most couples, actually I've never had any couple that came in and met with me ever know about that. And I just don't think that enough people in my business take the time to let people know that. So that answers that. Change of date. Change of date's really messy too. It's kind of like a cancellation, but basically what we do obligate ourselves to, number one, we say if you change the date on us, if you book us and then change the date, if you change the date within 30 days of signing the contract, we will just up and move, no questions asked, assuming that we're available. The thing where it gets messy is sometimes we've had instances where a client books us for a Friday. We give Friday discounts. We've had a client book us for a Friday. I gave them a discounted rate, and then they come back 6 months later and said, we need to move our wedding date. It's now going to be on this Saturday. Well, one thing, it depends if we're available, but the thing where it gets messy now is we can do that Saturday, but we can't do that price because we gave you a Friday price. So that's change date. So basically, whenever I meet with a couple, the first thing I ask them is the date set. Do you have your venues locked in? Because I usually try not to move forward with a wedding if the date isn't actually set. Concerns after the event, basically two things here at the very beginning. That's why we identified who the client is. The client is the one that I'm going to be in total communication with. That's the one I'm going to be doing all the planning with. That's the one who, before the wedding, we're going to do all the final preparations. That's who I'm usually meeting with up front. So if there's any concerns, it should come from the client, not a third party. We want to hear from the client because at that point we would need to figure out, with all the planning and all the communication we did together, how was there any concerns afterwards? There generally isn't. We don't usually have issues, but that's why we identify who the client is, because that's who we're working with. That's who I'm getting my marching orders from. So our goal as a company, we're going to go out and we're going to execute everything our client asked us to do. The other thing that we do have in here, we do a lot of weddings, at least 15%, sometimes as high as 20% of the weddings that we do throughout the year. A lot of our couples live out of state. So we've never, ever had a legal issue, but we do have something in here that says if a legal issue came up, that it would have to be handled here in Westmoreland County. That's in Pennsylvania. That's where we're located. So, just because someone lives in Virginia but came home to do the wedding here, or we have clients that live in California, Florida, all over the country. I can't be showing up for a legal issue in other states, so that's in there to protect me with that. Safety. We mentioned it. It's a priority for you, your guest, your venue, our staff, and our property. So to give some examples here, basically, in a nutshell, we say that a safety issue can take priority over a request. So if someone gives us a request but we don't feel it's safe, we're going to put safety before the request. So what's an extreme example so this makes sense? I always use the example, hypothetically, let's say the photographer's out with the bride and groom in the bridal party taking pictures. Someone notices a set of train tracks and says, hey, can we go take photos by the train tracks? If no one definitively knows whether or not those train tracks are still in use, Not a safe idea. It's just not worth it. I jokingly say, for a bride, getting your dress stuck on train tracks and getting hit by a train on your wedding day is probably, is going to put a damper on things. And obviously, I'm saying that sarcastic to make a point. But, other things, we just make safe decisions along the day. Lastly, to kind of end most stuff here in the contract, we do have an act of God clause. What we get at here is if there's an act of God, basically we're saying something that we have no control over, something that there's nothing that we can do to control that event. So I always use extreme examples like a blizzard. If there's a blizzard and there's a state of emergency and highways get shut down and things like that, let's say in that situation something beyond our control comes along and our DJs show up an hour late and didn't get started on time. We understand we will work with you after the event. Of course, that day, the mindset is, get through the event. Afterwards, we will take care of that with you. We'll come to an agreement mutually. But what we're ultimately saying here is that our liability is limited to what you paid us. So basically, in an event that we cannot control, someone can't book us for $1,500 or something and then turn around and sue us for $30,000. We're basically just saying our liability is limited to what you pay us because we can't run a business if every time we do a contract, if there's a blizzard, someone can turn around and sue us for $30,000. We do ask that during the event just to treat our staff with respect. And then we do have one final thing in here as regards to permits. If you ask us to shoot in an area that requires a permit, then that is the responsibility of the client. So that's all the main stuff. We have a page here that basically acknowledges travel. I always tell couples, when I quote you up front, I'm going to let you know, if I don't quote you any travel, then I'm basically saying we don't need to charge for travel. We include a page in here that identifies how much travel is included in all of our services. And the reason I do this is we had one situation one time where a client booked us for a wedding day. And then because of circumstances at the venue, that client had to completely change the location of where their ceremony and reception was going to be. And after they changed it, it was so much further away. It was well outside of our normal travel range. Well, we had signed a contract where we didn't charge them travel, but now it was an extreme situation and we did need to charge travel because it was going to be far away. So basically, we have a catch in here to protect us in those situations. Again, that happened once, so if something happens once, it kind of ends up in a contract to protect both parties. So finally, we end up here on the service page. We ask how you heard about us. This question here confuses people, so I want to go over this. Have you or someone else previously contracted services with us for this same event? What this is sometimes we will, let's say maybe have a customer comes in and books us for photo and DJ. So we do a contract for photo and DJ, and then a few months later, they decide they want to add on video. If they're adding on a whole other service, we're going to do a second contract at that point for the video. And just to save on our end some paperwork, basically they can say, yes, they've already contracted us. So on our end, when we're doing the contract, we don't have to start from scratch with all the accounts. At that point, we realize, we already have this person booked. We just need to add the video service. At this point, you're just putting in contact information, names, email addresses, and phones, and just the location, the name of the ceremony reception venue. That gets us down to the area where we're going to list what you've booked. So in the simple example, let's just say you've booked standard photo and standard DJ. Those are two packages, two services, and two package names. So this is where we're going to identify the service that you've booked. And version, this is where we're going to put a code in here, and that's going to represent what the package is now when you book, so that if it changes months or a year later, that you're protected, that you can hold us accountable for what the version that you've booked. After booking, we will actually send you an email. So when you get a copy of the contract back with my signature, you'll also get a record of that of that package with the same code. So you'll have a document that identifies the package with the code so it matches in your contract. That way you always have a record of exactly what you've booked. When I send you the contract, this area will all be filled out. I will figure out the numbers. We ask you to send the contract back with the deposit amount. So all you really have to do is go down to this field here where it says deposit and it's bold and underlined. The amount that is here is how much you will be sending us a check for with the contract. We will break down the final balance, the amounts, and when they're due. We send you a bunch of other records, but it just so it's in the contract, it's here as well. And then we'll put values. So if you book DJ, let's say for 5 hours, and then later want to know that you need to add a 6 hour, we'll put in the contract too how much it is per half hour if you want to extend the time later beyond what you've booked. So, in a nutshell, that is our wedding contract. So thanks for sitting through this virtual consultation about our wedding contract.